Let me say the part most sellers do not want to hear. If your home in Markham sold below what you hoped for, it was probably not because the buyer were cheap. It was probably not because the market was dead. And it was definitely not because that's just how things are right now. Most sellers do not lose money in negotiation because the buyer is smarter. They lose money because they start negotiating too late. They think negotiation begins when the offer hits the table. No, by then, half the game is already over. The real negotiation starts before the first showing, before the first open house, before the first buyer even decide whether your home is worth caring about. And that is exactly where most sellers in Markham leave money on the table. We see this all the time. A seller calls us after being listed for a few weeks. Nice home, strong street, good finishes, good school zone. They say we had interest, we had showings, and we even got an offer. But it came in lower than expected. And then we had to negotiate down even more. So I ask one question. What leverage did you create before the offer came in? And usually the answer is silence. Because most people think negotiation is talking. It is not. Negotiation is setup. And if the setup is weak, the offer will expose it. So let's say the truth clean. You do not sell your home at a higher price by being a strong negotiator. You sell at a higher price by putting the buyer in a position where paying more feels safer than losing the house. That is the game. Now let's break it down honestly. Your home will not sell at a stronger price because you think negotiation starts on offer night. That is the first mistake. Sellers think the agent job is to fight hard once the number comes in. Wrong. If the home was priced badly, presented weakly, and marketed lazily, and shown to the wrong buyers, what exactly are you negotiating from? Hope? Emotions? Volume? That is not leverage. That is panic with nice clothes on. Real negotiation starts with position. Before we ever talk numbers, we need the buyers thinking this home is rare, this home is clean, this seller is not desperate. If I want this, I need to come correct. That feeling raises prices more than any dramatic conversations ever will. Because when the buyer feels optional, they negotiate hard. When the buyer feels replaceable, they offer strong. Because you're pricing for ego instead of leverage, this one costs sellers a fortune. A lot of people think a higher list price makes room to negotiate. Sometimes it does not create room. It creates distance, and distance kills urgency. In Markham, buyers are not walking around confused. They're informed, they're comparing, they're watching what sold, what's sad, and what had to reduce. So when a home is priced like a wish instead of a strategy, buyers do not say let's negotiate. They say let's wait, and waiting is expensive. Because the longer your home sits, the less power you have. Now the buyer starts asking, why is it still there? What did others see? How long will they go? That is not negotiation, that is erosion. A smarter tactic is this. Price to create emotional friction. Price to attract the right pool. Price to make serious buyers feel like they need to move, not monitor. The goal is not to look expensive. The goal is to look worth fighting for. That is how you negotiate higher without sounding desperate. Because you are chasing the highest offer, not the strongest offer. This mistake is deadly. A lot of sellers get hypnotized by the top line. Big number. Nice. But then what? Weak deposit? Long conditional period, financing shaky, buyers not sold, lawyer review gains, closing mismatch, and now the so-called best offer becomes the offer that wastes your momentum. In a premium deal, clean terms matter. Sometimes a better negotiation move is not squeezing for another 10,000 on paper. Sometimes it is choosing the buyer who can actually close smoothly, and close on terms that protect your position. Because a deal that collapses does not just cost time, it damages your smell in the market. And once buyers smell weakness, they start negotiating against your timeline, not your property. So stop asking, which offer is bigger? Start asking, which offer gives me control? Because control is value. Because you answer too fast when the buyer goes quiet. This is where sellers leak money emotionally. A buyer sends an offer, it is not terrible, but it is not where you want it. Then there's a gap, a few hours, maybe less, and suddenly the seller gets nervous. Should we just take it? Should we counter lower? What if they walk? This fear is expensive. Silence is not always rejection. Sometimes silence is calculation. Sometimes silence is a technique. Sometimes silence is the moment where the other side is deciding how badly they want it. And if you rush to fill that silence, you tell them exactly where your pressure is. Now they know you're anxious. Now they know you want certainty more than price. Now they negotiate from your emotions. That is why composure matters, not fake arrogance. Composure. A good negotiator does not react to every pause like it is a bad news. A good negotiator knows when to hold, when to counter, and when to let the buyer feel the risk of losing the deal. Sometimes the strongest sentence in a negotiation is not a speech. It is, "We are close, but not there." Calm, clean, no panic. That is strength. Because you're giving buyers negotiation ammo before they even ask. Loose handle, bad paint touch-up, old caulking, cold basement, dim lighting, awkward furniture placement, small maintenance issue that seems harmless. Sellers always say the same thing. They're small things. Exactly. And small things become big leverage. Because buyers do not just buy the house, they buy the story around the house. If the story feels polished, they assume value. If the story feels sloppy, they assume hidden problems. And the moment a buyer starts mentally collecting flaws, they stop imagining living there and start building a discount. That is why pre-list prep is negotiation, not cleaning, not decorating. Negotiation. Every issue you fix before launch is one less weapon in the buyer's hand. Every confusing room you clarify is one less objection later. Every visual upgrade that creates confidence protects your price before the first counter offer even happens, because you're negotiating with everyone instead of filtering for the right buyers. This is a big one in Markham. Not every showing is equal. Not every buyer is your buyer. Not every conversation deserves the same energy. Some buyers are curious, some are qualified, some are emotional, some are strategic, some are just using your home to pressure another seller. If you treat all interests the same, you weaken your own process. A strong tactic is to identify who is actually capable of paying premium, who is aligned on timing, who value the location, who understand the upgrades, and who is buying this home for the reason that matters. Because when the right buyer sees the right story, price resistance drop. That is why one buyer will call something overpriced and another buyer will say, "No, this is the one." Your job is not to convince everyone. Your job is to attract the right buyer for whom your home makes emotional and logical sense. That is negotiation too, because you are letting the buyer frame the conversation. Watch this carefully. The buyer says, "The kitchen needs work. The market is slow. There are other options. We may need a longer condition period. We are not sure on value." And most sellers start defending. Big mistake. The moment you start defending too much, you accept their frame. Now you're negotiating from weakness. A better approach is to reset the frame, not emotionally, strategically. If they say the market is slow, that does not automatically mean your home is weak. If they mention other options, that does not mean those options are comparable. If they want to pick apart the house, that does not mean these points deserve equal weight. Strong negotiation is not arguing louder. It is deciding which facts matter. You do not have to accept every criticism as truth. You redirect. You anchor back to what is real. The lot, the school boundary, the layout, the updates, scarcity, the buyer demands for this pocket, the quality of presentation, the confidence of terms. You do not let the other side write the story and then beg them to like your home. You control the narrative because you think more interest and more leverage are the same thing. They're not. You can have plenty of showings and still have weak leverage. Why? Because curiosity is not competition. A lot of sellers get excited by traffic, but traffic without strategy is noise. What you actually want is overlapping interest from qualified people within the right timing window with enough confidence built around the home that buyers feel pressure. That is where higher prices come from, not random attention, structured competition. This is why offer timing matters. This is why launch timing matters. This is why photography, video, description, staging, and showing flow all matters. Because negotiation is not one event. It is the result of chain, and if that chain is strong, the buyer walks into conversation already softened. Not because you manipulated them, but because the property was positioned properly. That is what serious sellers understand. And that is why home sells with tension, confidence, and strong numbers, while others keep negotiating all the way down. So here's the truth. If you want to sell higher, stop asking, how do we negotiate harder? Start asking, how do we build leverage earlier? Because higher price does not come from pressure at the end, it comes from control at the beginning. The best negotiation does not feel dramatic, they feel inevitable. The buyer feels the quality, they feel the competition, they feel the risk of missing out, and they set up. That is the difference. Not louder talking, better setup. If you're selling in Markham and you want to know where your negotiating power is actually coming from or leaking out, I can break down the first 5 leverage points we look at before a home ever hits the market. If you're looking to buy or sell in Markham, call us at 647-370-8885. My name is Neeraj from Team Kaizen. Subscribe for more.